Welcome to today's live stream. I'm going to get things started in a few minutes. Just need to let everybody know the stream is going on right now. Okay, Big Hurt, what's up? What's up, D Woodward? I am in the Bronx today, and I am going to be talking about why black men need to have standards. Now, this live stream was inspired by one I had been watching with Black Male Advice TV, aka Ringo, where he was talking about black men being responsible for baby mamas. And I have to agree with Ringo on that point that yes, black men are responsible for a lot of the baby mamas in the black community. And the reason why they are have to be held responsible for the baby mamas in the black community is because we need to have standards in the black community. And those standards start with black men. The reason why those standards start with black men is because we are the stewards that God has established over the black community, and we are the leaders in the black community. Now, when it comes down to a lot of black men, they expect people to do things, but they don't understand that in order for things to get done, you have to take a leadership role as a man. And in order for you to take a leadership role as a man, you have to first establish your standards for how you are going to live and your standards for what you are going to accept and tolerate. Now, when it comes down to most black men who grow up in gynocentric environments like single mother households, they go by the standards of their single mothers and the women in the community. And when you follow the standards set by the female, what you are doing is you are lowering the value of the community and you are lowering the quality of life in your community. Because when you have men who are going by the female's standard, they are coming from a position of weakness. And the reason why they are coming from a position of weakness is because they are submitting to the female standard instead of trying to raise the bar to the male standard, which God establishes, because God establishes the man as the head of the household and he establishes the man as the steward over the household. And because the man is the head and the steward of the household, what happens with the man is he has to be the one to establish the standards from minute one. So if the man is out here, he has to be the one setting the standard, because if he sets the standard, then the women in the community have something to look up to, and they have something to follow behind as related to the overall community. So it's very important for the man to establish his standards from minute one, because it's those standards that will be what he will be judged by. And it's those standards that will be how he will be treated in his community. Because a man with no standards, what happens is he winds up being led instead of taking the lead in his community. Taking a look at what you're saying, D. Woodward, and the whole thing that he's making, the point is that the baby daddies, these are the guys who are having all of the kids, and the whole thing is they're the ones who are leading to the problems with the community having low standards, because the females follow behind the low standard men, and that the high standard men have to establish a high standard in the community. They have to establish standards in order for things to go on. When it comes down to black men have a big problem with not establishing standards and just tolerating whatever from whoever. And because they tolerate whatever from whoever, this is why black men never get the best in life and never get to set a standard for their community. And when it comes down to black men, they just don't understand how to set standards in their communities, because, again, they grow up from birth, in many cases, in single mother households, and they see women in the lead, so they don't understand that they have to go out here, and in order for them to take the lead, they first have to establish standards for how they will be treated, how they will go out here and have relationships with others, and how they will go about their business in the community. Now, I learned about establishing standards way back when I was 9 years old, and it was almost like a reflex. Now, I remember when I was 9 years old watching an episode of The Jeffersons, and after it, the news came on, and this report came on where they were talking about how this man had murdered this other man over this woman, and the woman was a single mother. And from that point in my life at 9 years old, I set a standard for myself saying that I would never get involved with a single mother. And that started setting me towards creating standards for myself and what type of person I would interact with, because I was already there at 9 years old making the statement, I would not get involved with single mothers. And that started me down the road to establishing a standard for myself. And when it comes down to men, that's what you have to start doing, again, at an early age, establishing those standards, saying, I will not tolerate something like getting involved with single mothers. And you also have to set a standard for how people will treat you. And I did that back when I was in high school, and I saw that there was a girl saying that she had liked me, and then she was talking greasy about me a couple of feet away from me. And I said I was going to set a standard for myself as related to respect. And I said to myself, I wasn't going to get involved with females who would not show me any respect from minute one and would not treat me with respect. And that's also about how I set a standard for myself and how I would be treated. So I was setting a standard for the intangibles of how I would engage someone or how they would engage me. And if you were to show me no respect, then I would not get involved with you, because that would be one of my standards for having any sort of social interaction with you would be respect, because respect is an important standard for a man to have. And a lot of black men out there, sadly, when it comes down to that standard of respect, They just don't go out here and insist on that standard, because when it comes down to black men, they will sit there and tolerate all sorts of disrespect from black women, disrespect and abuse from non-black people, and they won't set a core standard to saying, I am not going to tolerate this abuse. I am not going to tolerate people disrespecting me. I am not going to tolerate people treating me like I am second best. I am only going to deal with those who will treat me the way I see myself, and I see myself as the very best. So you have to say to yourself, as a black man, I have to be the very best. And if I am the very best, there is going to be a standard for how I am treated. And if you do not meet my standard for how I want to be treated, then we have nothing to discuss. And this is the big problem with black men, because they're thinking about is getting the attention of black women, getting the approval of black women, and possibly getting opportunities at sex with black women. And because they're thinking about these three things, they're not thinking about the standards that they're supposed to establish before they have a relationship with this woman. Because you have to think about the standards you establish for your relationship with this woman, because how you allow her to treat you is how you will be treated for the duration of the relationship. And when it comes down to men with standards, those standards allow there to be boundaries established for the relationship. So a guy who has standards, he's going to say, look, this is how I expect to be treated. This is how I expect people to treat me. And this is how we are going to have our relationship. And this relationship, because I am the man and I am God's steward, I am going to take the lead on things, and things will be done on my terms. I'm not going to sit there and let you dictate the terms to me. I will dictate the terms to how I will be treated. So when it comes down to black men, a lot of them are scared to do this because oftentimes they see the world from the perspective of their mothers, and they hear the horror stories that she tells them about how she was mistreated by black men, and they want to be these softer males who seek to do better by being nicer to a woman and by going out here and acquiescing to a woman. But when they go out here and present themselves in a submissive position, they create a position where the female is setting the standard. And if they are setting the standard, then they are just not going to respect you, because in order to earn for a woman to respect you, she has to see you as someone who is going to take the lead in setting the standard for the relationship. So when they see the man setting the standard, they see that he is setting the boundaries, he is setting the rules, and he is setting the tone for the relationship. So if they see him doing these things, it is setting the leadership. And then this is something that the female sees as a structure that she wants to follow. And that structure is something that she wants in a relationship, because it's that structure that lets her know that she is going to be in a safe place, she is going to be in a secure place, and that there are lines of demarcation for her to engage him in as related to the relationship. What's going on, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare? Glad to see you here. Benny G, I had to do that video on Ava Duvernay because when she made that statement on CNN, it just was not objective. And she was out here trying to pander to people as related to Donald Trump. And when they see us, it was just such a powerful miniseries. She was tarnishing the work that she had done by trying to make it into an anti-Trump statement. D. Woodward, glad to see you here. Yeah. Black women don't want a man with standards in many cases, because we have so many beta males in the community that allow her to get a pass. And that's the big problem in the black community, is that black women, because they see a man with no standards in place, what they do is they try to sneak and have relationships with weaker men because they know that those men have no standards. Guys like your Pookies, your thugs, your gang members, a lot of these guys come from these gynocentric environments. And because they come from a gynocentric environment, usually those environments have no structure, they have no order, and the female is leading things. So they're used to a female leading them. So the females choose them because they can get power in their relationship, and they use that power to control the relationship because they know in a relationship with a man with standards, there is going to be a structure for the relationship. There is going to be order for the relationship, and they aren't going to get away with anything. Art Hughes, what if you're a single father? Single fathers can date single mothers. However, they have to take a leadership role and they have to set the standard. So if any relationship that any man has, whether he be a single father, a single man, he has to be the one to set a standard, and he has to understand how important standards are to a relationship. So a lot of black men, they don't understand this, and this is why they'll sit there and talk about, how they get involved with bad black women. But the whole thing is like is attracting like, because if you don't have standards, the females are going to sit there and they're going to draw to you because they see somebody who is weak, somebody who is naive, somebody who is gullible, and they're going to take advantage of you because they know that you're not going to assert your male authority. And that's what a lot of black women in the community want to do, is they don't want someone to assert male authority over them. What they want is a soft male they can manipulate and control, because if there are no standards there as related to the relationship is on her terms. And if it's on her terms, those terms are arbitrary to whatever she wants them to be. Because what she will do when she is in charge is she's not going to have any standards, and the rules are always constantly going to be changing. And the reason why those rules are constantly going to be changing is because your woman is emotional. Because when a woman is out here, again, she is emotional, and those standards that she has, they change based on whatever feelings she has. Whereas a man, because he is logical, those standards are going to remain consistent because he approaches from logic. So that's why it is extremely important for a man to set the standards from minute one, because those standards when he sets them do not change. What's going on, Edek? Glad to see you here. That's true, K. Walker. Yeah. The man with the standards, he's not going to tolerate foolishness. Once he sets his standards and once he sets his tone, that means he is going to not put up with any mess. I got 34 in the chat and 11 likes. Let's get those likes up. Let's get the likes up, guys. We got 34. We can get it at least up to 25. So that helps with the algorithm. And I'm going to continue talking about standards here. Do I believe strippers come away from the thrill and high of always wanting attention from men? Edek, yeah, they can't come out of it. And that's why they stay stripping, because they want that attention, they want that thrill, and they get that because they know that those men who are there aren't going to set any standards. So that's why they go to the strip bar and want to be strippers, because they don't have any men in their life who set any structure. Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare, yeah. A lot of women, they were at the time back in the day, they would often talk about how they want a Tupac type thug guy with a degree, but that's kind of contrary, because Tupac type thug guys don't get degrees. I mean, guys like Tupac, they drop out of school, and they drop out of school because they don't have any standards. So what the female says what she wants is just unrealistic, because a lot of times females, they have very unrealistic expectations, and they have really unrealistic pictures of the world, because again, a lot of women, they see the world through rose-colored glasses, and the picture is distorted. So they'll come up with an emotional idea of an ideal, like a black man who is a thug with a college degree, but that runs diametrically opposed to each other, because your average thug lacks the discipline and the character to finish school, and in most cases, all he knows how to do is things based on feelings, because he thinks and sees the world just like his mother. Thank you, Stephen, for the donation. I really appreciate it. If you want to donate to the super chat, I'd appreciate that too. And again, I'm going to get back to the topic of standards, because when you have a community of men with standards, this is something that can really set a direction for the community. Because when you have a group of men in a community and they are setting the standard for the community, that means there is going to be a boundary for the community. And it's also going to mean that there's going to be a certain level of quality as related to the quality of life. So when you have a group of men in the community setting the standard that the neighborhood will be kept clean, the neighborhood is going to be kept clean. When you have a group of men setting a standard for the families in that community by saying that the children have to be home by a certain hour if they're out playing, that means when those lights come on, you need to be at home. That is a standard that those men are setting for how their children will behave and conduct themselves. And when you have a group of men who are saying that in order for you to go somewhere as related to their workplace, you have to be a certain age and your grades have to be a certain level, they are setting a standard saying that in order to work at one of our jobs, this is what you have to meet. This is the minimum requirement, because that's what a standard is. When you have a guy with a low standard, he's setting a minimum requirement, but usually men with high standards, they are setting a high bar for excellence. And usually when you have a guy with a high standard, what he's doing is setting a high bar for excellence, because he knows people can do better than what people expect of them. But when it comes down to many black people out here, they don't set a high bar for themselves. And that's why many neighborhoods wind up turning into ghettos, because they set a bar low to the ground, and they set the bar low to the ground because they lack the confidence to go out here and try to persevere towards working towards a higher standard. That's true, Benny G. I would agree with you on that. That Central Park 5 and Lissandro Guzman had, fathers in the home, but one of the boys in the Central Park 5, they showed that he had a father, but because the father was buying into the rhetoric of the police officers, he wound up betraying his son. So I understand that, yeah, if there were fathers in those neighborhoods, yeah, they would have never been out there, because I came from a home with standards. And the whole thing was, when you come from a home with standards, you're not going to be out in the street at those hours or being able to join those mobs. You'll be in the house at the time, and you'll be working on your grades and your homework. Edek, you make a good point. Do I think that those reality shows, yeah, they have brought down things, because when it comes down to those reality shows, they show that men don't have any standards and that they will accept anything. When you look at the way these men act in these reality shows, they really have lowered the standards as related to male and female relationships, because on most of these shows, they're on these gynocentric networks, and it's all about making these men appear appealing to the woman by being submissive and being conciliatory to them. And because of that, we don't have the men setting the standards or even talking about the standards they're looking for in a relationship and the standards they're looking for in a woman. So when we look at the networks and what they have done, they have made a major impact on the standards as related to men. So when we come down to men, again, black men have to understand why it's important to have these standards and establish those standards from minute one. Because if that's the way, when you have a standard and you have that standard there, it's letting people know that this is where I am setting the bar for my and get you to engage me. And when you set that bar for you engaging me, this is what you have to come to the table with in order to engage me. And that's what a man with standards says from minute one. He says, look, this is what you need to have in order to approach me. This is what you need to have in order for us to talk to each other. You cannot come to me with less than what I'm expecting, and you can't come to me, as I see it, with less than your best. And when you expect the best from people, then people are going to know they can't come to you with garbage. And this is something that leads to a lot of black men getting messed up in relationships. And that's why so many people call the decent brother the garbage man, because oftentimes, even though he's got a college education, even though he's got a good job, even though he's polished and professional, he accepts substandard people and he accepts substandard behavior. He's the guy who is in the garbage going after garbage tier females. And when he does that, he is lowering his value, because he is saying that by pursuing garbage tier women, what he's doing is he's saying that he will accept low standards and he will accept low standard treatment from low standard women. So that's what happens to many of these educated brothers out here, is that because they don't insist on the best from people, they get the worst from people. And that's all because they don't come to the table with their standards firsthand. A man who understands standards understands first and foremost that he has value as a man, and he has that value as a man because the living God created him to be first. He created him to be the steward. He created him to be the head. He created him to be the leader. And because he is the leader, he is the one establishing the standards. And he, as the one who establishes those standards, is the one who must insist that anyone who comes to him has to come to him on his terms, and they have to meet his standards. So that's something that many black men, they're not doing, and they sit there and they will go out of their way and not understand this and go, well, I'll just accept this person who's a baby mama, or I'll accept this female who's out here smoking and drinking, or I'll accept this female who's out here and yes, she has a boyfriend and she's still talking to this ex, even though she says she broke up with him, she's still talking to him. That's not what a man with standards says. A man with standards, he's going to come out from minute one saying, okay, this woman is a smoker. I do not want a smoker. This woman, even though she is a nice person, does not meet my standard for a relationship. This woman who is a single mother is sufficiently obligated, and because she is sufficiently obligated, she does not meet my standard for a partner in a relationship. And this woman out here who is still dealing with this ex-boyfriend, she is not someone who meets my standard because she is still emotionally attached to this other man. And my standard for a relationship is a woman who is not emotionally attached to another man. So if this woman is still attached to this other man, she needs to go stay with that other man. So these are standards that a man establishes. And when he establishes those standards, again, yes, he may not get relationships with those women, but he sets a standard that other women outside see. And because they see him setting those standards, they see a man who is prepared to take a leadership role. And because they see him prepared to take a leadership role, they see him as someone who is attractive. And when a man has standards, standards are one of those intangibles that make a man incredibly attractive to women, because when a man has those standards, again, it gives that woman that understanding that she will be in a place where she can be emotionally secure. And the reason why she can be emotionally secure is because she knows that this man is going to set a direction for the relationship. He's going to set a tone for the relationship, and he's going to set a direction, a foundation for the relationship. Um, okay. Yeah, Edek, it is hard for women to understand because women are extremely emotional, and that's why the man has to take the lead, and that's why he has to set the standard. Good morning, Chris. Chris Brown is the creator of the Omega Black manga, and you can get that manga on Amazon.com. It's great black manga featuring positive characters, and it's one where you see a man setting a standard and setting a tone. So that's the type of media you want to read if you want to see strong black male images. That's true, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare. Yeah, they think that when black men have standards, they're being too picky. And that's not true at all. When a black man has standards, it's him not being picky. It's him setting a tone for everything, him setting boundaries, and him establishing structure for a relationship. Because when a black man has standards, he is saying that this is what he's going to tolerate, this is what he's going to accept. And again, I'm going to get into that mystery level about what standards I think a black man should have. And I just want to talk about what Wednesday Nightmare made in her point, because it's not pickiness. It's a man insisting on what the parameters are going to be for a relationship. And the standards a black man should have, one is related to the intangible of respect. And this is like one of the core foundations for standards for men, is that you have to establish a standard that you will be treated with respect. Now, I remember when I was in Park West back in the late 80s, and that girl had told me she had liked me, but then started talking greasy about me. And I said, I'm not going to stand for a woman talking greasy about me and showing me disrespect to my face. And then I chose not to continue to engage her because she violated my standard for respect. So you have to set that standard for respect from minute one. You cannot put up with any sort of greasy talk. You cannot put up with a woman disrespecting you to your face. You cannot put up with a woman calling you names. You cannot put up with that type of stuff, because that shows that this woman has no respect for you. Now, the second standard you have to establish is as related to your dignity. And when it comes down to many black men, these black men don't understand what the definition of dignity means. Now, dignity means that a person has a value, and when a person understands that they have value, they are not going to allow people to treat them like they are less than. And when it comes down to black men allow people to treat them as less than. And that's why oftentimes they get less in the relationship world, because they have no standard for how they are treated as related to their dignity. And oftentimes they believe they have to compromise their dignity in order to have a relationship. And they often believe that they have to go out here and lower their value to get the attention and approval of a woman. Especially a lot of these simps and beta males, they believe they have to come at a woman by trying to please her, when in actuality, she needs to see you as a leader, and they need to see you setting that standard as related to dignity, because those two standards of respect and dignity, these are core to the foundation for a relationship. Because if you don't have a woman who will treat you with respect and a woman who does not treat you with dignity, you will never receive love from that woman. Because in order to receive love, you have to, one, earn the respect of this woman, and two, you have to go out here and have your dignity. Thank you, SB, for the donation. I really appreciate it. If you want to donate to the super chat, you can do that as well. And again, without those two intangibles, you're not going to have a successful relationship. Without dignity and respect, you have absolutely nothing. And sadly, too many black men, they don't set that standard because they have not been taught to love themselves by their single mothers and even in some cases their fathers. And because they have not been taught to love themselves, they don't understand how dignity and respect are part of the standards you need to have. Now, thank you, Black Ronin, for the donation as well. Really appreciate it. But the other part of the standards you have to establish is you have to set boundaries for your relationship. Now, boundaries, along with dignity and respect, is the invisible line that will not be crossed with you. And a man with standards, he's going to set a boundary for his relationship with a woman, for lines she will not cross and she will not go past. Because a man with a standard is going to say, this is how you will engage me, this is how you will treat me, and you will not cross these lines. And if you cross these lines, then our relationship is over. And when it comes down to a lot of guys from these single mother households, they sit there and they tolerate women stepping over their lines and stepping in their faces and getting in their faces. And they don't make efforts to check those females by letting them know that there is a boundary you will not cross as related to me and how I will be treated. Oftentimes, because these guys come from these single mother homes, they see the women in their lives just like their mothers. And because they see these women just like their mothers, they see them as female authority figures instead of seeing them as possible partners or possible wives. And that understanding that the relationship between a wife or a girlfriend is completely different than that of a single mother. So the standard you have to establish for your relationship with a woman is completely different than that of your mother. And there's guys from the single mother households, they don't understand this. And because they don't understand this, what happens is you have women stepping all over their boundaries and doing things like getting up in their face and emasculating them in public places and embarrassing them in social situations and treating them like a child. And the reason why they get treated like a child is because they don't know how to establish a standard like a man. When it comes down to a man, he understands that he has to set a standard for how he will be treated by women in public and how he will deal with her as related to her behavior, whether it be in a public place or a private place. And he's going to do that because he's going to set a standard that lets everybody know that he will not tolerate disrespect in public or private from this woman, because if she can get in his face, what that does is it weakens him as a man. And if she can break in his standards, then it allows others to believe they can get an opportunity to disrespect him, because if she can violate his standards, that gives everyone else an opportunity to violate his standards. Mystery lover, what about men who had both parents in the home and still can't make a relationship with a woman work? The problem there is usually that man came from a home with a beta male father. And when it comes down to a man who was a two-parent home with a beta male father, he has seen a dysfunctional model for relationships. And because he has seen a dysfunctional model for relationships, he has seen the man placing himself in a submissive role under the woman. And because he has seen the man placing himself in a submissive role under the woman, that's why he cannot make relationships work with women, because he is approaching relationships from a female perspective. And usually he thinks that he has to please the woman in the same way he sees his father pleasing the woman. So that's why those guys from those two parent homes have a hard time in relationships, because they come from the position of weakness. They come from the position of submission, and they didn't set standards with that woman. And because they didn't set a standard with that woman from day one, as related to those intangibles, what happened was, this is why the boy has learned this. And this is why he is continuing on the same dysfunctional paradigm as those other, as his own father. So that's why it's important for a man to have those standards. And that's why he has to establish every standard as related to himself before he goes out here and pursues a relationship with any woman. Because a lot of guys out there, they go out here at 12, 13, and 14, and sometimes even 15 and 16, looking for a girlfriend when they need to be focused on developing their standards. And once you focus on developing your standards, then you can start talking about how you want to pursue relationships with women. Because one of the big problems with black men is they have bought into a lot of dysfunctional models that they have seen, and a lot of media they have seen with Madison Avenue and Hollywood, which tells them that they must have a relationship with a woman or pursue a girlfriend in their teen years, when in actuality, you need to start taking time as a boy and start developing your standards, start setting your goals, and start setting your direction in life. Because once you set those things in place, then women will see you as a man with confidence, a man with power, because he has taken control over himself and taken personal power in his own life. And because now you have personal power, what's going to happen is women are going to want to follow you because they see you as a leader. And if you are a leader, you are out here creating things based on your terms and your standards. And once you have your standards in place, then you can go out here and pursue relationships with women. So you got to build yourself up before you pursue relationships. And that's something guys have to understand. Okay, mystery lover, a man can have standards, a woman can have standards. And what about compromise? Yes, there are some compromises that are made in relationships, but it all starts with the man's standards. And the problem with a lot of black men is they come into the relationship with no standard, and they're trying to follow the woman's lead. And I've seen this back in the 90s when I was in my 20s. Usually, a lot of these guys, they were trying to meet all these requirements that women had on their lists, like a guy having six-pack abs, a guy having six-figure job, a guy having a master's degree, a guy being this good man, this ideal. But the whole thing is, what made that whole model fall completely apart is the woman was setting the standards. And again, the standards, when she sets them, are based on her feelings. Whereas when it comes down to the man's standards are usually consistent, and those standards usually do not change. Usually when it's the woman setting the standards, she will change them based on whatever feelings she's having. But when the man is setting the standards, it gives her something consistent that she can follow. And yes, they do compromise when they have a relationship on certain things, but certain intangibles do not change, like the dignity, like the respect, and the boundaries that the man establishes. Because without those core foundations, the entire structure of the relationship falls completely apart. So if you don't have those core components to the relationship is going to fail. And this is why so many black men have a hard time having relationships with black women. And that's because they don't set any standards. If you look at many of the thugs, many of the bad boys, they don't set any standards. And this is why these men wind up drifting in and out of these women's lives. Yeah, we got 49 in the chat Wednesday, and yeah, we got 37 likes. Let's get that up to 49 or 50. I mean, if you're watching the chat, you put a like up there. You can put in a donation to the super chat. I mean, making these live streams is very expensive. So I really appreciate everybody and all your support. So let's get those likes up. Let's get those super chats up. I'm going to still keep talking about this because, again, when I look at black men these days, they have no standards whatsoever. I mean, I remember reading a article about this musician who had no standards, and he was murdered by his girlfriend and her side dude. And that happens because, again, this man had no standards. Yes, he had tremendous success as a musician, but he did not have success as a man because he had no standards. And he had no standards because he did not set a boundary for how he would be treated. Because for him to let this woman have a side dude showed that he had no standard. Because a man with standards, once he sees a woman out here involved with another man or talking about another man or sitting there talking about an ex-boyfriend, he is going to see that as a disrespect to him. Because one of the ways many women disrespect a black man is to sit there and talk about an ex-boyfriend right in front of them. And when you talk about a ex-boyfriend in front of a guy, that's like sending a middle finger up at him and saying that you have no respect for him. Because when it comes down to disrespect, this is one of the worst disrespects. And a lot of guys just sit there and listen to her talk about this ex. Because in her case, if she heard you talking about an ex, she wouldn't tolerate it and would be ready to leave. So as a man, you have to set a standard saying, look, if you are in a relationship with me, you cannot be talking about this dude. And if you are still engaged with this dude, then you can go back to that dude, because you are not going to be with this guy and be talking to him while you are with me. If you just do that and talk about these dudes, that's disrespect, and that's something that no man should sit there and tolerate. And a lot of guys, they sit there and they tolerate this stuff, and they don't put a hard check on it because they think that if they put a hard check on it, they may not get an opportunity at sex with the woman. But would you want sex from a woman who cannot show you the respect that you deserve in order to have a relationship with you? And any woman who would sit there and talk about other men when she's supposed to be following your lead shows that she's not loyal from minute one. So that right there is a violation of your standards. And that's something many black men have a problem with. They think that they cannot speak up for themselves and say, no, you're not going to be talking about this guy in front of me because that's disrespectful. And you're not going to be out here doing things that like going out here and calling this guy or going over to his place, because that's disrespectful to me. Because if you are in a relationship with me, you need to be focused on me. I'm supposed to be the leader. I'm not supposed to be the number two, and when I'm supposed to be the number one. Yeah, Edek, that's true. A lot of guys, they don't understand that they have to lead. A lot of guys, they buy into this media that tells them that they're supposed to follow the woman's lead, because a lot of media out here in Madison Avenue and Hollywood, they have it where it's about getting the woman's attention and approval. I was watching a Coach Red Pill video, and he was talking about how they present us with these bumbling, stumbling, incompetent guys and these women who are supposed to be confident and capable. And again, that's showing the female as the leader and the male as a follower. So a lot of guys, they don't understand that they have to take the lead, because if a man takes the lead, again, he is setting that standard. And once he sets that standard, then the women know that what has to be done. So a guy has to set his standards, and black men, they have to start getting in the mode of understanding they have to set the standards for the relationship. They have to understand that whatever they tolerate from minute one is going to be going on throughout the relationship. And a lot of guys, they don't understand that. They think they have to put up with things. They think they have to endure things. But the more you tolerate from women, the more they will push the boundary. So you as a man have to let her know where the line is, because once she knows where the line is, then she knows she cannot push that boundary, And again, that makes a woman more secure. Now, another one of the ways you can set that standard again with women is saying no. And this is a big problem with a lot of black men out there, especially guys who come from single mother households, is they have a hard time saying no to women. They believe that if they say no to a woman, it is the same thing as saying no to their mother, and they don't want to hurt their mother, so they don't want to hurt the woman. And this is a big mistake that many black men make in relationships is they believe that they can't say no to a woman, but saying no is one of the greatest things you could ever say to a woman in a relationship. When you say no to a woman in a relationship, it is something that on the outside, emotionally, she's going to be upset about, but on the inside, she's going to have great respect for you because she now knows where the boundaries are. And when it comes down to many black men out there, they're afraid to say no to a woman because they are afraid that if they say no to a woman, then they may leave them or they may just go out here and pursue a relationship with another man. Well, if you say no to a woman and she goes out here and she says she wants to leave, let her leave. If she wants to go pursue another man, let her pursue another man, because it shows that she has no respect for you. She has no respect for your standard. And if she won't agree to follow your standard, then she is not worthy of being your woman or your wife. So when a woman does not want to follow your standards and you say no to her and she doesn't want to be there, let her go on her way. So when you have a standard and you say no, that should be the end of it, because that is a boundary you are establishing as a man. And as a man, you have to keep your boundaries consistent, because that's how you maintain standards for your relationship. And this is a problem, again, black men have when they go out here and they're always thinking that they have to keep agreeing with the woman. But when you sit there and try to agree with the woman, again, that's coming from a position of weakness. And women don't like a man who is going to keep saying yes to her. She likes a man who's going to say no to her, because the man who says no to her, this man is going to be more attractive to her, because again, that's related to security. So they know where the boundary is and they know they can't cross that boundary. So they know that if you go out here and leave, whatever happens to them happens to them. And a lot of times, if you say no to the woman and she goes out here, in many cases, she's going to go along with things because she understands no is actually good for her. And the guy who says yes to her, usually too many times, is someone she can't respect. Mystery lover, why would a man treat a woman like his mother? When you have a guy from a single mother household, he treats a woman like his mother because he grew up submitting to female authority figures. And because he grew up with female authority figures, he believes that all women are just like his mother. This is something I go into depth in one of my ebooks, Manginas. They look like men, but they act like ladies. And it's some of the point I make, again, in Misadventures of Captain Save-A-Ho. And when it comes down to these guys from these single mother households, they're looking for a woman to be like their mother because they want a mother in a relationship, and they want a codependent relationship with a woman. So they don't want an interdependent relationship that a husband and a wife have. What they want is a relationship where the woman is going to be over them and taking care of them like a child. So they don't want a woman as a partner in a relationship. They want a woman as a mommy to take care of him. So that's why a man is out here and he wants a woman like his mother. And that's why it's dysfunctional. Now, a lot of men, they do want to pursue relationships with women with character traits similar to their mothers, but they don't want a man to be treated just like his mother. He may want a woman with the same type of loving and caring personality and the same type of character traits, but the codependent guys who come from single mother households, like a lot of black men do, they want a mother. That's why you see so many of these guys living in a woman's house and a woman buying clothes for them and a woman going out of their way to care for them, because the way they are caring for them is like taking care of a small child. And that's why their relationships deteriorate, because the woman is looking for the guy who is in this submissive position to grow up into manhood. And what happens is they don't get any respect from that for that man, because they see him in the place of a child. So they don't see him in the place of a man, because the guy, even though he's 25, 30 years old, he's coming across mentally and emotionally like a child. So she has no respect for him the way she would have for a man. In order for a woman, again, to see a man as someone she respects, he has to have standards from minute one, and he has to enforce his standards from minute one, because once he has his standards in place, then the woman is going to see him as a man, because a man is someone who takes the lead, someone who takes charge, someone who asserts himself, and someone who shows a woman who is going to set the direction for the relationship, set the tone for the relationship, and set the course for the relationship. And with women being natural followers, she's looking for that man to take the lead, and take that lead because she wants to be secure. Yeah, that's true, Mystery Lover. Yeah, the reason why they're taking care of those black men is because they want to, they see it as a childlike codependent relationship, and they want to take care of the black man. But what the whole thing is, they lose respect for that black man because that black man is in the position of a child. And that whole order is dysfunctional because it's outside of God's natural order, because in God's natural order, the man is the head of the family, the man is the steward, and they all follow the living God. And the reason why they follow the living God is because they see the man following the living God as his leader, and that's what makes it a functional relationship. That's true, Amari's perspective. Yeah, you're not entitled to help fix, change, or heal a woman if you're not married to her, because the whole thing is, if that's not your wife, you're not responsible for her. And that's why a lot of guys out here need to understand why it's important to not go out here and engage women without standards. Because a man without standards, a man with standards, what he's going to do is he's only going to get involved with a woman if he wants to build with that woman and he wants to marry that woman. Because under that marriage, which is not under the legal definition, but the standard of the living God, he is looking for a wife who's going to be a helpmeet and support in helping him build his family, helping him build his household, and it's helping him take care of his children, because it needs both of them working together in order to take care of the children. So you need to have a man setting those standards in order for you to have a functional relationship, because it is the man who, again, is going to set the course towards building, and he needs the woman to work with him to take care of that building. And in order for him to build, he has to have a vision for what he wants to build. He has to set goals for what he wants to build, and he has to set those standards for how he's going to build. Because again, standards go to how, because if you are a man and you have no standards and I give you building materials, what you're going to do with those resources is you're going to waste them. And you're going to waste them because you don't have a standard for what you want to build, what type of quality you want to build on, what type of structures you want to build. And this is why standards are so important. in a man's life. Because when a man has a standard for what he wants in life, then he can say what he will accept as related to things. So he's not going to take things that are of poor quality in his life. He's not, like, if he's going out here and he wants to build a home, he's not going to go out here and take cheap, shoddy materials to build his home. He's going to go out here, and if he has high standards, he's going to expect to go and find the very best materials, and he's going to invest his resources in the very best material. And as he's investing in the very best towards building, he's going to try to have a set of standards for what he's going to build and how he's going to build it, so he can go out here and build something of top quality. What's going on, Mike Williams? Mike Williams is the artist of the Deke Sledge comic strip, and he does the covers for many of my books, like John Haynes' A Conversation with Death, A Legendary Mad Matilda, and the new John Haynes' Dark Succubus. I don't have it in front of me just now, but yeah, it's over on the desk. But the new John Haynes' Dark Succubus, which is now available on Amazon.com. Mike did the cover for that. And yeah, if when you are building, you need to have a man with those standards, because once he sets those standards and he sets them high, he's going to build something of the highest, the absolute highest quality. And he's going to build something of the highest quality because he is expecting to do something that he knows will be the very best. And you need a man to have those standards from the minute one, because if he has the standards, he can start setting that course from minute one with his relationship, with his business interactions, with his professional interactions. And this is something that Black men, they aren't getting, because again, when you come from a single mother household, you really don't get that foundation in standards. And that foundation in standards, this is going to be one of those building blocks on your road to success, because a lot of times when it comes down to Black men, they accept people less than people's best. And because they accept less than people's best, people believe that they don't have to give them their very best, whether it be in a conversation, or job interview, or business deal. And they believe that they have to just sit there and take garbage, when in actuality, you don't have to take garbage from other people. You don't have to take trash from other people when you are out here, because as a man, you have to be the one who sets the standard for how you are treated. And that's something that a lot of guys, they're not getting these days. They're just sitting there thinking, I have to sit there and take this stuff. And that's not the way things go. Now, I'll tell you another story. I remember back in the 80s, I used to think, because I was growing up, you have these stores that were in my neighborhood, like 3rd Avenue, 149th Street, and Fordham Road. They had this thing where they would treat Black people badly, where they would say, oh, we have to hold your bags, or if something doesn't fit, you can't return it. And we would have to go to those stores, and we felt we had to tolerate those things. But as I got into my 20s, I realized I don't have to shop at those places, because as a man, I felt I had value. I felt I deserved respect. And I said to myself, I don't need to shop in these stores like 3rd Avenue and Fordham Road to get these jeans and sneakers. I need to go to a store where they are going to treat me with respect, where they are going to value my money, and they are going to provide me with professional customer service. So that's why I stopped shopping in those shopping districts, because as I saw it, if you're going to treat me poorly and then expect me to continue to buy your merchandise, that makes me a fool, and because it lowers my standards, and it makes me go down to your standard, and it lowers my value, because it shows that I'm willing to compromise my dignity just to get a piece of merchandise, like a pair of sneakers. And a man does not compromise his dignity and his self-respect just for something as trivial as a pair of sneakers. Instead, what he does is says, my money has great value, and I have even greater value. And because I have great value, I am not going to go to these stores in this shopping district. I'm going to take my business to a retailer which will treat me with respect. And that's what a man is going to do when he has standards. And when he has those standards, again, he will walk into an environment and people immediately are going to treat him with respect because he has respect for himself. So that's what a man is going to do when it comes down to his standards. He's not going to go out here and accept less than the best from people. He is going to go out here and expect the best from people because he expects the very best for himself. Looks like we got another troll here with this macho man. I'm gonna try to get rid of this guy, but thank you, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare, for dealing with him. Again, that all goes back to standards again, because when you have standards, you don't put up with people like trolls. And again, I do not stand for that in retail again. And when I would go into stores like Brooks Brothers back in the day, they would give me respect because I would walk in the room acting like I'm confident and I know what I want. I know what I need. I deserve to be here. And I want to, and they respected me because I came in there with confidence because I had a standard and said, look, I'm here to go out here and shop. And I don't get intimidated by the store. I go to the store expecting the store to meet my standard. And that's what you have to do when you're out here as a black man, is you have to have those standards about yourself and how you conduct yourself. Because if you expect less than from people, they will give you less. But if you demand more of people, they will give you more. And that's something I would see from Gordon Ramsay when I would watch the show Hell's Kitchen. Now, Gordon Ramsay, on the show, he was always talking about standards. And the reason why he would talk about standards with gourmet dining was because he knew that his customers wanted an experience. They wanted a fine dining experience, and he wanted every plate to be consistent. So he established a standard for his food, and he wanted to insist that the food didn't go any lower than the high bar that he expected. So he trains his chefs to maintain a high standard for his food, and that's why his restaurants are some of the most popular in the world, and that's why he got Michelin stars, because he insists on having a high standard. And that's what black men have to insist for themselves, and that's what they have to insist from the way that they're treated. And when it comes down to black men these days, they're not learning about those standards because their mothers can't really teach them about standards, because that's really more of a father thing as I see it. And I also see it as something as related to the way we have in our communities that black men are. They just sit there and they think that they have to settle for second best, because a lot of times, a lot of them buy into racism, and a lot of them also, again, buy into the single mother telling them that they have to submit to her. And those two things lead to those men having those low standards and not trying to raise the bar, because if they were to go out here and raise the bar, then guess what? They would get more in terms of relationships. They would get more in terms of business. They would get more in terms of success, because when you demand better of people, again, you get better of people. And when you expect better of people, they will then give you better in return. So you have to understand how important having a standard is as a black man. And this is about something that a lot of guys, they don't get. They just sit there and go, oh, I just have to accept whatever people give me. And this is the way, a mantra for a lot of black men out there is I have to accept whatever black women give me, whatever white men give me, whatever anybody gives me, when in actuality, you can walk away from the table. And when you walk away from substandard anything, what you are doing is you are raising your value as a man because you are establishing a standard for yourself and saying that this is what you will not accept. And this is something black men, a lot of them have to learn, is that saying no to things is actually a good thing, because when you say no to something, you are saying I will not accept less than the best. And you will not take something that is substandard, you will take something that meets your standard. And that's something black men have to learn from about their lives, because when I look at black men these days, they sit there and they're complaining about how bad things are, when in actuality, you have to take the lead if you want to make things better. And the way you make things better for yourself, the way you make things better for your community, is for you to set a standard from minute one. Because if you set the standards, then everybody follows you. And when they see you setting the standard as a leader, that's when they start to value you. That's when they start to respect you. And this is something a lot of guys, they have to understand about relationships and even their own lives, is they have to understand that you as a man have to set a standard as a man. So that's something you have to really focus on as a man. And that's something black men have to start learning how to focus on as related to their lives. Because for over 50 years, we've had women telling us what they want in a man, but never the black man sitting there insisting what he wants from a woman. And I went in depth on this in one of my ebooks, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, in the later chapters. And it's something black men definitely have to do, is they have to start setting the standards as related to their relationships, how they are treated on the job, and how they set the direction for their lives. Oftentimes they're out here following somebody else's standards instead of establishing their own. And when you allow somebody else to establish those standards, then you are following somebody else's lead and you are not taking the lead in your own life. So you as a man, when you go out here and you set these standards, you are saying to the world, I am not going to accept less than this level. And as I see it, black men need to start saying, I will not accept less than the best, because I, as a man, have value. I was created by the living God to be first. I was created by the living God to be a head. I was created by the living God to be a leader. And I will not accept less than the best from people. And I will insist on being the best. Spremo, yeah, they made that point earlier, calling you picky. And I have been called picky myself. Recently, I was called that by a guy who offered me that comic book to write. But again, when you have a standard, you are saying that you expect a certain level of quality, and you are expecting to have a certain quality of life. Mystery Lover, my name is Sean, Shawn, not John. And yeah, life can be hard for anyone at any time. But still, you have to maintain your standards, because your standards are related to the tangible of your integrity. And if you don't have any standards, then it's hard to maintain your integrity, which is related to your internal character. And if you don't have any internal character, then what's going to happen is you can be compromised very easily. So it's very important for you to have a standard, because if you don't have one, then, oh, you were talking to John, that's okay. All right. But if you don't have a standard, then everything is just going to fall. Your life is going to fall completely apart. And this is something guys need to get, especially black men. They just need to get need to get why they need to have standards, and they need to set that direction and that tone for themselves. Because if you let others set your tone, if you let others set your direction, then you are a follower. And too many black men out here are followers, and when they should be going out here learning how to become leaders. And being a leader is about you taking responsibility for yourself, and part of taking responsibility for yourself is setting a standard for yourself. 1 second. Wanted to get the book off the desk. This is the cover Mike Williams designed for Dark Succubus, and John Haynes' Dark Succubus is now available in paperback. And if you guys could go out and support Dark Succubus, which is the newest book in the John Haynes series, I would really appreciate it. And if you would support the the other two books in the 2019 catalog, Isis, All That Glitters, and Eve's Deemed Goddess of, I would really appreciate it. I really want to get more people reading my SJS Direct Fantasy, just like the over 200 people who picked up my book, The Man Crisis, where I also talk about men's issues and topics like I'm talking about right now. And the reason why I wanted to tackle the topic of standards is because when it comes down to black men, again, I see a lot of simping out here. I see a lot of tricking out here. I see a lot of guys out here, and they don't demand better of women. And this is why they get treated so badly by women. And this is also why they get treated so badly, not only by women, but they also get treated badly on the job. They also get treated badly by people in stores. And it's all because they have absolutely no standard for how they demand or the way they would be treated. Okay, that was nice and cold. But when you have standards, again, you just don't settle for less. So you don't settle for, the less of anything. And this is something guys have to start focusing on and making it like a mantra to them, saying, Bombor, I don't think robots are ever going to replace women, biological women, because when it comes down to men want women. Usually men want women because women are alive, and robots, even though they're made out of silicone, they just aren't like a regular woman. She's talking to Supremo. She's talking to John Wright, so it's just her and going back and forth with him. But when it comes down to robots, that cannot replace a man. 70% of black women, a lot of them became single mothers when they were young. And what happens is they became single mothers because they didn't have any standards. And when it came down to the males they were involved with, those males didn't have any standards. And because they were getting involved with males with no standards, this is why we have so many single mothers in the black community. And again, as I was listening to Ringo's live stream, and he was talking about why black men are accountable for all these baby mamas out here, it's because those men never learned what standards were at an early age. And because they never learned about standards at an early age, that they just sat there and got involved with women related to, they got involved with these women, and they just sat there and got involved with her for on her terms, and didn't go out here and get involved with her on his terms. So these guys never learned that they needed to set a standard for their relationships. They never learned how to set a standard for their lives. and they never learned how to set a standard as related to how they will go out here and be treated. So they're being treated by these women in the same way the mothers treated their fathers. And the reason why that's happening is because they have no standards and they didn't understand how to set standards from minute one. So this is why standards are important to Black men and why standards are paramount if we want to rebuild the Black community. And one of those foundations, again, is Black men having standards, and them having the standards is one of those core built concrete pieces of the foundation that we need to build on if we are going to rebuild this Black man. Because when I see your Black man out here, he desperately needs to be rebuilt, and we have to rebuild his mental structure. And the way we rebuild the mental structure of this Black man is by him learning how to have standards. And when a Black man learns how to have standards, it really is one of those things that starts to work in that rebuilding process in showing him that he as a man is the leader. He is the man, is the one who sets the tone. He as the man sets the direction. And he does this because he is showing that he has the highest value in society. And as the person with the highest value in society, according to the living God, because he is the head steward and the head, he is showing that he has the greatest value on earth, and that value that's the greatest value next to God himself. Is he is showing that value, and that value again allows him to set that tone and direction for everything. And that's why standards are important in rebuilding the Black man. And that's why a lot of these brothers out here are struggling, because they don't have any standards whatsoever. They just take whatever the woman gives them. And when you take whatever a woman gives you, you are saying to yourself, you're sending a message to her that you are of low value. And a lot of guys out here, they don't see how them going out here and taking whatever the woman gives them lowers their value. They don't understand that sometimes you just have to sit there and say no to the woman, or say that's not good enough, because that means that it gives her incentive to go out here and do better, be better, and try harder. And that's something that women want to do. Women, again, are as helpmeets and supports. They want to please their man. They want to win the approval of their man, and they want to earn the respect of their man. And that's why it's important for women to hear guys saying no, guys saying, I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to allow you to treat me that way. Because when you do that, what you're doing is saying that I have value as a man, I have worth as a man, and as a man, I am going to insist on boundaries for my relationship. I am going to insist on a code of conduct for how I will be treated, and I am going to insist on a standard for how we have this relationship. And these are important for a man to have in his relationships. He has to have standards, because if there are no standards, there is no set of rules, and there's nothing for the woman to understand as related to the rules of engagement. And the same thing for bosses as well. When you have bosses on the job, you also have to set standards for those bosses so that they know that, yes, I am working for you, but I expect a level of professionalism. I expect a professional conduct when we are interacting, and I expect a level of respect to be given to me, well, because I will acknowledge your authority. And if I'm going to acknowledge your authority, you need to show me respect as well, because that's how we have a professional relationship with each other in the workplace. And that's something that needs to be established from minute one on the job, and even in places like business. Bombor, What do I think of men going overseas to find love? If they want to do that, they can do that. But again, you have to go overseas with the standards. And the problem with a lot of black men is they're sitting there talking about getting their passport, but they have no standards. And this is why guys like that guy with the Russian bride, the college professor, mathematics professor, got played for $50,000 because he had no standards. And because he had no standards, what happened was this is why he wound up getting taken advantage of by that Russian female predator. Alex Stone asks, why are black women so mean? Well, the reason why they are mean, again, goes back to standards, because as long as men tolerate black women's being nasty and angry, they will continue to behave nasty and angry and be mean. But if you walk away from those women and say, look, you want to be mean, you want to be nasty, you don't need to, I don't need to be with you because you do not meet my standard for respect. If you do not treat me with respect, then I don't need to have a relationship with you. So that's what a man with standards is going to say to these angry black women, these women with the perma-scowled face. They're going to say, look, you don't meet my standard for a relationship. You don't meet my code of conduct. And if you want to act this way, then we have no reason to engage with each other. And I will engage those who come up to my level. Yeah, the feminists did cause women to resent femininity, but a lot of people need to understand that the feminist herself is a deeply disturbed individual. When it comes down to many of the feminists, a lot of them are lesbians, a lot of them have mental problems, and they're not a model that women need to follow. And the problem with a lot of guys out here is a lot of women go out here and they follow the feminists, not understanding that this is a damaged woman. In a lot of cases, she has been molested. Some cases she has been sexually assaulted. Some cases she has been raped. Other cases she has mental problems. And this leads to her having mental problems. And when it comes down to black women, they will follow this feminist, not understanding that she's talking about men in a negative fashion because she has had negative experiences with men. And because she has negative experiences with men, she projects it on all men. So when it comes down to black women, they aspire to be like white women, not understanding that the feminists that they're following are deeply troubled, deeply damaged, and these are women that men are avoiding for a reason. And the reason why men are avoiding them has to do with them being mentally ill and a lot of cases mentally damaged. So a lot of people, they look at the feminist and they look at her as somebody who is just an angry woman, but there's a reason behind the anger. And once black women start seeing the reason behind the anger, they'll see how toxic the white feminist is and the black feminist is, and make efforts to really avoid that woman, because that woman, she is toxic. And one of the reasons why she's toxic is because she has no standards. And that's another thing about feminists that people need to understand, is that she wants to establish standards. But again, because she is emotional and mentally unstable, if you keep trying to please her, what she's going to do is keep changing the bar and moving the goalpost. And this is why you cannot engage a feminist by her standard. And you, as a man, have to establish your own standard and stay firm to your standard, even though she will come at you with her shaming language. She will come at you being argumentative. She will come at you being hostile. The way you defeat a feminist is standing firm, because once women see you standing firm to her and maintaining your standard, those women are going to respect you, and they're going to respect your boundaries. And what they're going to do with this feminist is they are going to distance themselves from that feminist and then stand by you. But the big problem with most American men back in the 60s is they lacked the backbone and the stones to stand up to the feminist. And they thought they could go out of their way to please her. But the whole thing with that was they lowered their standard to her level instead of insisting that she step up to their level. And that's why they wound up falling in the 60s, and that's why American society fell in the 60s. Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare, yes, I have heard of Lilith, and Lilith is actually the inspiration for a heroine I'm writing in a novel called Eternal Night that I'm doing right now, which is going to be a vampire story. And I read the biblical story of Lilith, and the character's name is Lilith, based on the biblical Lilith and how she was a very domineering woman, how she refused to submit to Adam's authority and God's natural order. And I'm going to be making a major commentary on Lilith in Eternal Night and talking about what it means to fall into the hands of the living God and what it means to be away from God and what happens to women when they go out of God's natural order. So I'm going to be making some commentary on Lilith in Eternal Night. I'm on that novel right now, and I'm up to about chapter 5 or 6 in that story. So I have heard of Lilith, and again, I'm using that as the basis for the character in Eternal Night, and that character is also featured in Isis Night of the Vampire. So if you want to, I'm well aware of Lilith, and I'm getting ready to go further in depth on her in Eternal Night. So when I go into that metric, I'm going into vampires and addiction. I'm going to go really in depth on that myself. And, I'm going to go on all of those things, and I'm exploring all of that in Eternal Night. Thank you, SB. I really had to get this topic out here because, again, I listened to Ringo, and his live stream was brilliant in talking about how black men become these create these baby mamas. But the reason why we have the baby mamas is because we have no standards in the black community, and because our men don't have standards. They sit there and they'll talk about how Ringo was wrong in his live stream, but when I look at him from a God-centered perspective, I can see where he was absolutely right, because when it comes down to the man has to set the standard for the community. He has to set the tone for the community. He has to take the lead for the community, because when a man sets a tone, he is going to be a husband and a father to his children, and he is not going to produce a baby mama with a woman through an act of fornication. No, he's going to have children who he fathers in a marriage, and he's going to do that because that is going to be his standard for his relationship and is going to be his standard for building his family. So I could agree with Ringo on that point, because when you have a man setting that standard for his family from minute one, he does not become a baby daddy. He becomes a father, because he is the one who sets the standard for the relationship with the woman. So I understood what he was saying, and I have great respect for Ringo for coming out here and saying it, because a lot of black men, they were going after him in the live stream, disrespecting him. And I just looked at it and I said that was just out of pocket to do that, because he was coming from a statement like a man. He was coming from that perspective, getting those guys to understand, if you want to have a relationship with a woman, you have to have a standard that you set up. You just don't come out here and just go out here using and abusing women, and then you create these illegitimate children, and those illegitimate children are wandering around with no direction because you didn't set any standards for that woman. And because you didn't set any standards for that woman, the children that are growing up don't have any standards for how they should conduct themselves or how they should go about their lives. And that all comes from a man understanding his role as a man, his role as a leader in the community, and his role as God's steward, who he has to be accountable for at the end of this life. So this is important for a man to understand, but too many men are not getting that training about how to conduct themselves as a man. And a lot of that has to do with them not having men who are ready to be fathers out here. And this is what happens when they're going out here having sexual relations with women without understanding the biblical standard and the God standard for sexual relations and sexual relationships. So guys aren't getting these things, and I wanted to get those things for them. In the stream, I wanted to go a bit more in depth on it because when you don't have any standards, again, this is why your black community is a ghetto right now, because men who have standards, their neighborhoods are not ghettos. Their neighborhoods are communities. And the reason why those neighborhoods are clean is because those men set a standard. The reason why those schools have great resources is because those men have a standard for how their schools are going to run. The reason why those neighborhoods in the suburbs have things like football in the fall and programs for the kids and jobs is because those people in the community set a standard for how they are going to live. And black men need to start creating their own standard in their communities and their own standard as related to how they will live, and stop trying to live by trying to get the approval of others like white people, because that's the greatest thing that weakens black people is we keep seeking white acceptance, white validation, and white approval, when in actuality, we look at our ancestors, they always set a standard for themselves. And oftentimes when we had black towns, black schools, they often produced better educations because we had our own standard, and our own standard is a lot higher than a white standard. So when it came down to the civil rights movement, one of the great mistakes we made was lowering our standards in order to get white acceptance. And that was a grave error that our civil rights leaders made all those years ago, in thinking that white people's things were better than our own. So we have to have our standard. And again, the standard starts with men. Excuse me. It starts with the man because, again, God put the man in charge. And if the man is in charge, he has to set that standard for his community. And he's the one at the end of the day who is accountable. And the other problem with it is too many men, they don't want to be responsible for the community. They don't want to be responsible for the standards of establishing the standards of the community. And they have been taught that they have to accept somebody else's standard, which is what happened during the 60s when black women sided with the feminist movement and joined the welfare state. They let the government establish the standard for the community, a standard we have, like Trey Williams makes the good point of saying we traded ownership for integration, because when you have ownership, then you can establish a standard for the community. And when you have the government running things, then you don't have any ownership. So you don't have anything to be responsible for. So you can't establish a standard for anything. That's right, wise guy Joe. It's not that men are the problem. We don't know our role as men. We don't know what we are supposed to do. And the big problem is again, our black pastors don't teach the role of men. They mostly have their churches designed to pacify the woman and entertain the woman and get money out of the woman by pandering to her emotional needs. And he's not preaching the gospel so people can understand the role of man as related to God and God's natural order. And he's not teaching about how a man's role relates to maintaining standards in a community. And that's something that men have to understand going out here, is that you have to understand what your role is as a man, and you have to understand what that role is as related to standards. That's true. Our seed is important, and yeah, you have to choose. You have to be careful who you deal with. And the problem with a lot of black men is, Jonathan, is that a lot of guys they've bought into Madison Avenue in Hollywood, which tells them that they have to accept a offer of sex from any woman and not value their seed or value, more importantly, their time, because both of them are precious, and you shouldn't just give them away to just anyone. You need to have a standard for who you deal with. And if this woman is not meeting your standards, you should not waste your seed or your time with her. Because if you are in a relationship with a woman, again, you don't have to take every offer given to you for a sexual relationship. You can also say, look, even though you are making an offer, I'm not taking it because I have a standard for how I will engage a woman. I have a standard with who I will engage with. And I don't have to say yes to every female that comes to me, because as the one with the seed and the one who is with the resources and the one who is the leader and the steward, you have to be the one to set the standard for who you deal with and make sure that they're dealing with you on your terms. Yep, the women, they don't need a man because they have a man taking care of him. That was a point I made in a novel called The Thetas. They have a white man named Uncle Sam taking care of them, and he has them following his standard. And that's the big problem, is the black man is not setting the standard in his community. It is the government setting the standard. And when the government sets the standard, what happens is the quality goes down, because when you have a government standard is low in comparison to what a black man could do. Because when you have a black man setting a standard, he is going to have a higher standard expected. And because he has a higher standard expected of people, he is going to go out here and build better than what the government would do. Now, one of the things that impedes a lot of black growth is, again, you have racists who get in the way. But if they were to get out of the way, I believe black men could go out here and build something truly great as related to the black community. And they would do that because they would expect better, they would demand better, and they would insist better of their community. And they would insist on maintaining their community because they would have some ownership over it. And when you have ownership over something, you're going to set standards for how it will be cared for. Well, a lot of black women are getting benefits, Mystery Lover, from the government. They are getting things like welfare. They are getting affirmative action jobs. They are getting lots of benefits from the government, and the government cares for a lot of black people in the community with things like Section 8, things like WIC. So they are being cared for, by Uncle Sam, and it was his care that led to a lot of the black communities going down, because he lowered the standard in black communities and even lowers the standards in public schools, because he does not expect much from black children. And because he does not expect much from black children, they don't go out here and try to do better. Yeah, that's true. The heterosexual black man is a clear and present danger to white supremacy, Trey. And the reason why he's a clear and present danger to white supremacy is because he's going to set standards in the black community. And white supremacy, they have low expectations of black men, because they need black men to have low expectations, because that fits their narrative. And when black men are underperforming, it makes white men appear to be better in comparison. So if you have a high performing black man with high standards and high expectations, what that does is it refutes the narrative of white supremacy, which says that black men are lazy, black men are incompetent, black men are stupid, and black men can't compete, by showing that a black man can compete. And this is something that white supremacy needs, because if you have heterosexual black men who are competitive, this shows that those black men are ones that can take power in their community and take charge of their community and can create something that is on the level of many white communities. And that's something that makes white men extremely uncomfortable, especially a lot of racist white men and white supremacist white men. It makes them extremely uncomfortable because they know they have to deal with direct competition from black men. So that's why they see black men as a danger who are heterosexual. And the most dangerous black men are the ones who are heterosexual, have a value in being black, have a love of being black, and are willing to set a standard for being black, because those men are going to go out here and build. And when they go out here and build, they are going to create things that show that white supremacy is a lie, white supremacy is a false narrative, and that white men don't know what is best for a black man, and that a black man can set a course for himself in America, and that he can set a course to doing something great, something that they didn't want people to see with towns like Rosewood and Black Wall Street, and something they want to erase from history because it just does not fit their narrative. Well, Mystery Lover, 400 years on this soil, and the black man situation is the same in some places because they don't want the standard. They don't want black men to see their value as men. And the whole thing is that that's what keeps black men down, is that they don't see their value as men. They don't see their value as related to the living God. They don't see their value and their role as related to the living God. And they don't set a standard as related to their role as related to the living God. So these men are they are a danger, and the danger is if they start seeing their role, seeing their value, because this is a sleeping giant. And once this giant wakes up, then nobody can go out here and go and use this black man as a scapegoat. Nobody can exploit him as a resource. And that's what white supremacists have been doing for over 100 years. They've been using the black man as a scapegoat for all of the violence and criminal behavior. They have been using him as a resource, as a way to get their tax money through putting him in prison. And they've been using his family as a resource for the welfare state and their government programs. So this black man, if he were to be educated, he would be a serious threat. And if he started to create things by his own standard, that would make him a major threat to white supremacy. So that's something people aren't really understanding about this black man. And this is why I want to go out of my way to go in depth talking about it, because, again, one of the things that is important to a black man is having standards, because when a man has those standards for his life, then he can go out here and start working on building something of substance, because you cannot go out here and build something unless you have a standard for what you want in terms of what you're going to produce. For example, in order for me to produce a book like a John Haynes Dark Succubus, I have to have a standard for what I want to produce. So I have a standard for my cover art because I want to attract people with a positive image of a black man. That's what I asked Mike to design for the cover. I wanted him to design a positive image. I wanted bold art. So that was my standard. And for the interiors, I want to work as hard as I can to make sure that there are no typography errors and there are no issues with sentence structure. So I'm setting a standard as related to the quality of the book. And I want to make sure that my standard for the books are on the same level as the trade paperbacks. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to make sure that my books are of the highest quality. And as an independent publisher, I know I have to compete against other publishers. And if I want to compete against those other publishers, I need elements in my book to ensure that they are of the highest quality. And I have to establish a standard for that. And those standards are, I want to make sure that I hire a professional artist like a Mike Williams to design the cover or a Bill Walko to design the cover. So that's part of my standard. And then as you are looking at the images on the covers of the book, that gives you an incentive to go take a look inside, because if I'm going to put a high quality image on the cover, then you have an incentive to go start taking a look inside the book, like a Eastern Goddess of, or a John Haynes Dark Succubus, or an Isis All That Glitters, or the Man Crisis. You have an incentive to go look in the cover when you look at the great art on the cover that's professionally designed. Then you want to go in and look at the interiors. And then that's how I leave a strong first impression on people, because if the book has no typography errors, good sentence structure, well-written, compelling story, then we have a standard. And when you have a standard, what happens is people start looking at your work and saying, hey, this SJS Direct book is on the same level as ones by Random House and all of these white publishers. And because SJS Direct books are on the same level as Random House books, then I'm going to go buy that SJS Direct book. So that's how standards relate to business. And as Black men, we have to have the same standard, because that's what gets people to see us as having value, see us as someone they should respect, see us as someone we should appreciate, and someone who is out here who has value. And when it comes down to Black men, we have to value ourselves if we want others to value us. And part of us getting that value is us establishing a standard. Thank you, Black Ronan, for the donation. And yes, not all white supremacists are white. What's scary about white supremacy is not the white supremacists, but those who follow white supremacy who are Black, because we have a lot of Black people out there who follow white supremacy, and they believe in white supremacy, and they believe in the standards of white supremacy, and those standards are detrimental to Black people. And the reason why those standards are detrimental to Black people is because it teaches us to lower our standards and lower ourselves down to the level of a white supremacist who sees us as less than, and for us to conform to a standard that tells us that we are inferior to white people. So white supremacy creates a standard that is detrimental to Black people, because it tells us we have no value as people, and that in order for us to be considered exceptional, we have to be seen as substandard instead of raising the bar to present ourselves on an exceptional standard and present ourselves as the best in everything and expect excellence from everyone. Because a Black man who understands standards, he's going to say to himself, I want to expect the very best from people. I want excellence from people, and I want people to be the very best. And I want to demand the very best from the people around me. So I want, as a Black man, for my Black woman to meet a standard of excellence. I want my Black children to meet a standard of excellence. And I want them to meet that standard because who they are reflects on me, and who I am reflects on them. So when it comes down to Black men, this is why standards are important, because when the woman you choose to get involved with is a reflection of you, and your woman is a reflection of how you see yourself. And that's why it is important for you as a black man to have standards, because the woman who you are involved with, she is a mirror image of you. And when you deal with a woman who has no values and no character, this is what what she says. What you're saying about yourself is that you are expecting garbage for yourself, you are expecting bad behavior for yourself, and you are expecting the far less from yourself than what you deserve. So that's why it's important for you to have standards, because when I look at white supremacy standards, they're very paternalistic. They expect less than the best from us, and we need to start expecting the very best for ourselves. And if you guys want to see me make more live streams or more videos, you can donate to the Patreon. I'm going to leave a link to that in the chat. That's a link to the Patreon. And I'm now offering a new option, which is the Cash App. And if you want to use the Cash App to make a donation, I would really appreciate that, because I'm trying to raise funds to pay for the ISIS graphic novel. And I've got a few dollars for a couple of pages, and I'm still trying to raise the funds to get the whole thing together. So every donation you guys give me helps me towards that funding the graphic novel. And again, I want to give you a graphic novel with a high level and a high standard of quality, because I have standards, and I want you guys to have something that is of high quality. And again, as a black man, I have high standards, and I expect the very best of myself, and I expect to try to get the very best out here to you. And again, I want to see black men working towards excellence. I haven't done an audiobook yet, Wise Guy Joe, but I have excerpts and samples on YouTube. I have excerpts of, I think, Temptation of John Haynes. I have excerpts of what is it? Legendary Mad Matilda. I have excerpts of Esteem Ascension. I have a couple of audio excerpts I've done. I'm getting ready to try to do an audiobook. It just depends. I may do an audiobook project soon. So that's on the burner coming up. But right now I'm doing I have 3 books that I'm doing right now. One was Eternal Night. The other one was ISIS, the main event. I've already gotten John Haynes, the Man with Nothing to Lose. That's in editing. And that one I did the concept cover for that. So I have books in process. I also am pondering doing a black man survival guide to teach the young brothers about how they can survive in the world and about the unwritten social rules for black men. But what my fear is of that book getting in the hands of white racists. So I'm really hesitant to do that one, but that's a concept I'm coming up with that I would love to do as nonfiction after seeing the success of the Man Crisis. I want to do a book talking about Black Man Survival Guide. It looks like we got another troll in here. This Lazio Okosi, whatever he is. We need to get this guy out of here. But those are the projects that I am working on right now, and that's what I'm getting ready to put out. And again, I might actually do a book reading live stream just to see what people's response is to it. I might pick up one of the books and do a whole reading and try to read a whole book in a live stream. So that's coming up. But I really would appreciate it if you guys would go to the Patreon and donate to the Patreon, because that's how I pay for the internet to do live streams. And I would really appreciate if you guys would pick up the books of the 2019 catalog, ISIS, All That Glitters, and Esteem Goddess of, and John Haynes, Dark Succubus. I'm going to get ready to wrap up the stream at this point, and I really thank everybody for coming out to the live stream. And I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to listen to the live stream. And I hope to possibly do another live stream this Friday night. I'm pondering making that one a goth live stream. It depends on how I'm feeling. But I'm hoping to get one out this Friday, and I hope you'll be there for Friday's live stream. Again, I really would appreciate if you guys would pick up the 3 books of the SJS Direct 2019 catalog, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me today in today's live stream. Thank you all for coming to the live stream. I hope you'll be there for Friday's show.